Greetings and salutations, friends and gamers of all stripes. My name is GM Dave. I am your man behind the screen, and welcome to what I have decided is going to be episode 2 in a brief ongoing So You Want to Be a GM series focused on the health and stability of our tabletop role-playing campaigns. This video is going to piggyback slightly off the previous So You Want to Be a GM video that I recorded back in December, where I discussed, or more accurately, rambled about the concept of a GM as a game master versus a game manager, with the core lesson of that video being the importance of GMs learning when and where to say no to their players to support the health and stability of their campaigns in a way that not only makes the campaigns more stable and healthy, but makes the game more fun for the players and for the GMs themselves. In this episode, though, we're going to move away from the idea of tools that should be in a GM's toolkit and instead focus on issues that can arise when it's really the mechanics of the game itself that are breeding issues of stability and consistency within your campaigns. In particular, the focus here is going to be on games that tend to front load the players with a lot of power, or games that really tend to set the players on a path where their choices don't matter so much. There's one or two very key things that are set up that the players will do, which are just always the most optimal way to do things, and ultimately lead to a naturally more boring and less fulfilling experience on the whole. So, first and foremost, why are these two particular issues such a problem? Well, in order to understand that, we're going to need to look at some basic examples of where these problems can come from and what problems these can lead to at your table. And in order to do that, we're going to take a look at some examples that come from the arguably two biggest role-playing games on the market today, Pathfinder 2 and Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Both of these are games that very much have their merits and their failings, and while I personally do prefer and always have preferred 5th edition over Pathfinder 2, I recognize there are some things that Pathfinder 2 does better than 5th edition, and vice versa. Unfortunately, both of these games run into some serious problems that really cause major issues when it comes to creating a sustainable, healthy, long-lasting campaign, and these problems are baked right into the mechanics of the games. We'll go ahead and we'll start with Pathfinder 2, as it is the simpler and quicker to explain of the two. The core issues that plague Pathfinder 2 in terms of campaign sustainability are something that are very easily recognized and recognized very quickly, and that is the video gaming nature of its combat. And a lot of this comes down to the way in which Paizo redesigned Pathfinder 2 versus Pathfinder 1st edition. In their goal to reduce bloat and remove the massive amounts of feat trees and feat pools that existed in Pathfinder 1, which, make no mistake, was an insanely bloated game that really offered way too many options to be sustainable and effective. I've said this before, I'm sure I will say it again when it comes to Pathfinder. When you hit the point that you are literally bringing special algebra into the game in order to boost up your spells, you have a bloat problem. This was something that, to their credit, Paizo sought to fix with Pathfinder 2. They wanted to bring more viable options to the players to not only make it feel like the players had more meaningful choices that they could make throughout the course of their character creation, but that they wouldn't feel overwhelmed with the massive amount of choices that was available to them, and that they could successfully avoid falling into a trap by picking a choice that might have seemed cool on paper, but in practice ended up being very much unviable, or so niche that it hardly ever saw use in many people's games. Unfortunately, Paizo was not really successful here in a lot of ways, and this was my experience in the playtest. But you don't just have to take my word for it, and while I have been having a few more issues with his channel lately, I will say Cody over at Taking 20, in both videos he did about this, his initial video talking about his experiences, and then his actual technical breakdown listing out the math behind his reasoning, makes very strong points as to why this is a problem. To put it simply, Pathfinder is running into a very similar issue that 4th edition did. Optimized rotations. For most classes in Pathfinder, possibly all of them, you have set specific rotations of abilities or set specific ways of approaching combat, approaching spells, handling the way you move around on the battlefield, and really just about anything else related to in-combat actions that are just objectively the superior choice. And it's very easy to see these in the classes. It is just baked in that way. It's very easy to figure out after a couple times playing. And again, you don't have to take my word for it in this case. I would recommend going and watching both of Cody's videos on this subject, and in fact I will link them down below so that you can. I think it would be a valuable insight for those of you who might not believe me in this case, which would be fair considering that I don't have the most experience with Pathfinder 2. I gave it up after the playtest because I simply don't like the way it's built. But what about the system of these two that I do prefer? What about 5th edition? Where is that going wrong? Well, 5th edition's problem is a little bit different. Where Pathfinder kind of shoehorns you into a specific way of doing things because that's the most optimal way, 5th edition's problem has to do more with how it front loads character classes with more power for the players, and how there's a few core mechanics built into the game that really do rig the difficulty much more in favor of the players versus a more even keel or favoring the game master, which in and of itself would also be a problem for the consistency, stability, and health of your campaign. And similarly to Pathfinder 2, in order to see this problem in 5th edition, you need to play the game a few times. You need to play within the realm specifically of that system, and you can't so much compare 5th edition to the previous systems in order to get a feel for this. I remember very distinctly when 5th edition first came out, there were a lot of players coming out of 3rd edition and Pathfinder who were making comparisons about how much weaker things in 5th edition felt, how the character abilities weren't as powerful, spells weren't as powerful, you couldn't reach those same crazy heights that were available to you in 2.5, 3rd, 3.5, and Pathfinder 1. But over the years that the game has been around, as we've played around with this new system and within this new system, we learned pretty damn quickly that, yeah, you might not have been directly as powerful compared to previous editions, but you sure felt a whole hell of a lot more powerful, because within the context of 5th edition, players are more powerful. The characters are more powerful most of the time. There are exceptions, of course. One of the other issues with 5e has been a viability issue, wherein certain archetypes across all of the classes are just notably weaker than others. There are issues that parallel Pathfinder 2, where some choices really are just plain worse for you to take. But that is a smaller issue in 5th edition compared to the front-loading of player power and the player favoritism inherent in the mechanics. And at this point, it's no secret the two mechanics that are the primary culprits of this, they are your short rest and the death save system. At least where both of these work where healing is involved. The simple fact of the matter is 5th edition very much favors player survivability more so than just about every other prior edition. 4th edition I can't quite speak as much on because, like Pathfinder 2, I just really did not like the game from the outset. There was nothing there that really got me involved, that really grasped me, that really made me enjoy the game as a tabletop role-playing game. So I didn't play enough of it to experience whether death was a more major issue in that compared to 5th edition. But where 5th edition is concerned, the game absolutely favors the players in the survivability regard. The toughest levels are generally speaking between levels 2 and 5, and even then, you'll find yourself having a tough time trying to kill player characters with most standard challenges. Which is not to say that you as the GM should be actively trying to kill your player characters, but if the threat of death does not feel like it's present for the characters in that game, then eventually, yeah, the players will get bored. At least most of the ones that I know will. It is rare that I've run into players that just want to do nothing but steamroll everything in front of them. They want to feel like they're accomplishing something in combat. They want to feel like what they're doing matters. But in order to feel that, there needs to be a sense of challenge. 5th edition struggles with this. But despite the fact that we've talked quite a bit about where 5th edition and Pathfinder 2 fall short in this video so far, this is not, in fact, a video discussing the failings of 5th edition and Pathfinder 2. Remember, we're here to look at examples where the mechanics of the game we are playing provide issues that conflict with the health and stability of our ongoing campaigns. I use Pathfinder 2 and 5th edition specifically because they are the big dogs on campus right now, and they both provide some different but strong problems in this regard because of how they work mechanically. So what can you, as a new or even experienced GM, do about this? If this is something that you've struggled with or suspect that you may struggle with, how can you counteract it? Well, by and large, it's going to come down to homebrewing some solutions or turning to other GMs to homebrew solutions for you, potentially. But before you can homebrew those solutions, there is a first step that you need to take, and that is identifying the possible problem areas within a game's mechanics that could lead to this issue. Remember that as we just examined, both Pathfinder 2 and D&D 5th edition have completely different mechanics that lead to the same problem of potential player boredom. And what happens when a player becomes bored with their character? They start wanting to do something else. And that desire to do something else, to move away from your game because the way the game works is not satisfying to them, that breeds problems of health and stability within your campaigns. Luckily, the solutions to get around these are quite often pretty simple. It tends to be one or two mechanics that either put the challenge up maybe too high, depending on the type of game that you want to run and what your players want to do, or bring it down too low. And oftentimes, these things can be easily worked around. We just need to make sure that we're putting in the effort necessary to read and understand the systems that we are trying to run. We don't have to have a perfect understanding at the start. In fact, no GM should expect to have a perfect understanding of the systems they're running the first couple times they're running it. But take some time, read up on the systems, talk with more experienced GMs, reach out to the resources available to you on the internet, and see what kind of solutions they might have, what sort of suggestions they might have if you start running into issues where your players are becoming bored for one reason or another. If they feel like the game is too video gamey, well, what might be some solutions to get around that? Is the challenge just not high enough? Maybe other GMs out there know of ways that you can pluck a few mechanics out or work a few new mechanics in that can easily make that more manageable for you. But no matter what the solution for you finally ends up being, in the end, fixing the problem is going to come down to our ingenuity as individuals running these games and our understanding of what the players in our groups want. We need to know not only what we're looking for, but what they are looking for. And everyone needs to be open about that in order for us to overcome mechanical issues that breed boredom. And that's all I have for you on this subject today, friends and gamers of all stripes. Once again, my name is GM Dave, I am your man behind the screen, and I would love to know what your thoughts are on this subject down below in the comments. Have you run into these issues where the mechanics of a game have bred boredom and dissatisfaction for your players, or maybe even yourself as a GM? If so, go ahead and tell me about it, and whatever solutions you use to avoid it if you manage to find one. And if not, maybe someone in the comments down below will be able to help you find a solution to get past that. Meanwhile, while you're down there, if you liked this video, please feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification icon if you would like to see more, and open up that description box to follow me on my social media presences. And if you could do me the solid of clicking on the webtoon link and reading my webcomic Phoenix Rising, I would very much appreciate that. Well-liked comic, 9 stars out of 10 on average, well worth your time if you're into a fantasy adventure story that's a little more focused on character and family. And with that now said and done, friends and gamers of all stripes, once again, I would like to remind you that in the world of tabletop gaming, it is important that you not just sit back and watch, but get in there and game.